the very day that you wreck it. Though it may take some time, oh, to get to know this old shipwright, then I will bid thee good fortune, and I will bid thee farewell. I'll leave a ghost at the helm to guide you through the realm. For here there be monsters. I don't deny that I'm worth. All I ask is that you name it for its birth before you make it. I did build it not just to watch you go, Name it Arthur, name it for the sea. Name it Arthur, name it after me. Name her Arthur, name her for the sea. Name it Arthur, name her after me. Name it after me, name her after me.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fall 2025 VINsider virtual pickup party. I am your host, proprietor, Jason Haas. I am joined by our two top winemakers, Director of Winemaking, Neil Collins, and Senior Assistant Winemaker, Chelsea Franchi. I'll let the two of you introduce yourselves. So, Neil, you want to go first?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Neil Collins, I guess Director of Winemaking and Vineyard Management these days. Been with the company pretty much since the beginning. Excited to have you guys here and to talk and taste, and hopefully you guys interact and ask questions that I can't answer. So let's go.
Extra points if you ask a question Neil can't answer.
Related to what I know, which is a small window.
All right, and I'm Chelsea Franchi. I'm the Senior Assistant Winemaker at Helpless Creek, and I've been working in the cellar with Neil for the past 18 years. I'm wrapping up, my 18th season here.
So you've got 70 years of Helpless Creek experience on the screen. So, but yes, please try to ask us a question we can't answer. That would be really fun. So these virtual pickup parties are one of the really fun things that we think came out of COVID, where we had to figure out new ways to reach people. And we realized that as nice as the actual live wine club events are that we host here, there's lots of people for whom it's not practical to make a trip out to Paso Robles in the middle of the fall or the middle of the spring. And this allows us to kind of be agnostic as to where people are. So we're continuing to do it. We did feel like they had grown a little longer than maybe we wanted and maybe you all wanted as viewers. We saw a drop off after an hour and a half. So we've tried to streamline this so that we will be done in an hour and a half. That means that we have cut a few pieces and we've tried to be more concise in others. Oh boy. We are not doing the Master of the World kits this time. The cost of doing these small bottlings and the mailing have grown to the point that we didn't feel comfortable passing them along to you all, asking you to pay $150 for a kit. And we realized that a lot of you were just opening a wine that you had from the shipment or a wine that you had in your cellar anyway. So that's what we hope you do. So open something. Please let us know in a comment where you are joining from. And if you've opened something, let us know what it is, because that's always fun. Okay, so we would love this to be interactive. We have Ian Consoli at the switchboard. So if you have a question, he will pull it up on the screen and we will answer it. And we're going to intersperse, kind of talk about the 6 core wines that we sent out in this shipment with kind of generally what's going on at the winery, at the vineyard, the business. So without any further ado, I think we should kind of dive right in and talk about the first wine, which we've decided this time will be the Patelin de Tablas Rosé. I just have glasses, samples that we poured out of the kegs that we use here in the tasting room. I think Neil and Chelsea, who are joining from home, may actually have the bottle. So when I talk about it, we'll have the picture up on the screen. But if one of you wants to actually show a bottle, that's great too. Okay. So the Patelin Rosé is our chance to make an homage to the wines of Provence. I mean, we have different inspirations within the Rhone for all of the wines that we make. This happens to be a Provence inspired rather than Châteauneuf-du-Pape inspired, because you may not know, you are not actually allowed to make a rosé in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. If you do, you lose the Châteauneuf-du-Pape appellation. So Provence, which is just east of Châteauneuf, is super well known for rosés. So this is the one wine that we are going to be showing, which is from 2024. Otherwise, this is going to be a deep dive into 2023. So I think one of the things I have been realizing is that 2023, and we'll talk more about why, 2023 is going to go down as one of the great vintages for California, for Paso Robles, for Tablas Creek. It was a cool year following a very wet winter with a really long, slow ripening cycle. And the wines got like almost a month extra on the vine, and they came in with incredible depth. And I feel like that has maybe caused people to overlook the 2024s, which followed more than they should. Because I think 2024s from our blending trials have been absolutely spectacular. I don't know if Neil or Chelsea, if either of you want to talk at all about what you find in the 2024 wines that you've had so far.
Chelsea?
I would say, we're gearing up for on premiere. So we'll start offering the newer vintage, the 2024 vintage of the Esprit Rouge and the Panoply. So we've been, doing samples, and we're pulling kegs so that people that come out to the tasting rooms can try these wines on tap. And tasting through the foudre where these wines are resting comfortably right now. These wines are gorgeous. I mean, they've got a great, powerful structure. They've got chewiness to them. And I think for me, it's just like, there's a toothsomeness to these wines. There's good density, but there's great expression of fruit. Like the 2024s, I still don't think I know them quite as well, but the things, what we've been seeing so far is extremely exciting. So I'm really, really looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say about, the on premiere wines.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I think for me, the most important things for our wines are structure and balance, and the structure of the wine itself more than the flowery, beautiful aromas, etc., which are important. But having a wine with a great core and a great structure to itself is of huge value to me. And I remember from the blending table that there was plenty of that on the table. And what I've tasted out of foudre, when I've been showing people around, etc., and just when I've wanted to go taste out of foudre, everything's been tasting really, really beautiful. I love the Esprit.
I went back and looked at my 2024 blending notes because I was showing some of these wines when I was out in Chicago last week. And I realized I gave the highest percentage of ones in the red blending, I gave more than half of the lots that we tasted ones, which I have never done before. And I don't think that this is a great inflation question. I think this is that, first of all, there weren't all that many lots. It was a pretty scarce vintage, but it was really, really strong. So I think, Ian, you might have a few pictures queued up of 2024, because it started off like 2023. It was wet. We had another 30 plus inches of rain year. We had incredible growth in the cover crop. I love this picture. It's like we're going to lose the sheep if the grass grows any higher. And the first half of the year seemed like it was playing out very much like 2023 had. And then it was like at some point in late June, California flipped a switch and was like, no, we're going to go back to 2022 and it's going to be hot. And July was the hottest month that we have ever had at Tullis Creek since we put the weather station in. And yet the vines didn't shut down. They didn't give up. They didn't show a lot of the issues of weakness that we would have expected. They instead just were like, okay, we're going, like, let's go faster. And the harvest caught up from being 2.5 weeks behind to starting on schedule. Yeah, that's a measurement of degree days by month. So you can see like we were cooler than normal in April and May, slightly warmer than normal in June, and that was just about all the last month. And then look at July. I mean, it's normally a hot month, and it was almost 200 degree days warmer than normal in what is normally the hottest month of the year. So everything just went fast, but the vines had enough vigor, and there was enough water in the ground, and the regenerative farming that we'd done was successful enough that they never really slowed down. They never shut down. They never slowed down. They just sped up, and then we were able to bring it in as fast as we needed during harvest. And it was an intense harvest. I think, I don't know, Chelsea, you probably can talk to that, but I remember coming in several times and seeing like you and Neil standing on the crush pad, looking at all of the grapes that were out there, looking at the tanks, looking at the grapes, looking at the tanks, being like, yeah, we'll make these fit somehow.
Well, I feel like it's surprising that you knew that it was us, because I feel like both of us were kind of going like this. We're going to figure this out somehow. Yeah. Some years you have those challenges, and 2024 was definitely that year. What's so funny, because it felt like it was going to be one of those more prolonged harvests. And especially off the heels of 2023, where things were just, so wonderful and late. And then all of a sudden, you just hit the gas and forgot to take the foot off the pedal. Right. Yeah, but it was a great year. We had a good, capable crew. We've got a great cellar team and a wonderful vineyard crew. So all of these things just to make for a very successful harvest.
Cool. Okay. Why don't can you talk a little bit about kind of the winemaking for the Patelin Rosé? We got a question from Bev that maybe Ian can pull up on the screen.
Yeah. So it's so interesting, because from year to year, I do feel like I talk about the coloring up of the rosés as kind of being like the first indicator of what kind of vintage we're dealing with. And it's not necessarily, like a quality qualifier, but we typically, so we make 2 rosés at Tullis Creek. One is the Patelin that you have in your shipment, and that we have in our glasses here. And then the other is the Dianthus, which is our estate rosé. So the Patelin rosé that's in your shipment, I'll talk about first. But essentially this is going to be 100%, well, it's mostly direct press. It's not 100% direct press. But what that means is basically we pick the grapes, and this is really important because we harvest the grapes specifically for rosé. These grapes aren't going into a red wine. They're not going into any other project. They are being picked specifically for the rosé project. So we, basically harvest them when we're looking at the intersection of numbers between Brix, which is how we measure sugar, and our total acidity or titratable acidity, and our pH. So basically that intersection and the balance of those 3 numbers is how we really decide on our picking schedule. So this fruit is primarily from vineyards around Paso Robles. So we've got, vineyards all over the place. And Direct press means we put the clusters directly into the press. Our press cycle that we run is about 2.5 hours. So the grapes only see about 2.5 hours of skin contact when we make this wine. So it's precious little time that it spends on the skins. And of course, skins are where we get our color pickup for the red wines. In contrast, when we make the Dianthus Rosé, which is our estate rosé, it's 100% Saignée. And Saignée means to bleed in French. So we process the red grapes as we would if we were making a red wine. And we bleed the juice off anywhere from 24 to maybe 72 hours later. And it totally is vintage dependent. It can be obviously variety dependent as well. But more and more years, I feel like it is vintage dependent, because there are some years where you just get color nearly immediately, and then there are other years where we're letting this juice sit on the skins for 2 days, maybe 2.5 days, 3 days. This year, everything was about 24 hours, pretty much to the watch. But in 2024, I do feel like we let things sit a little bit longer just to get a little bit more flavor expression. The color maybe wasn't as rich or as deep, but I think you'll find that the aromatics and the flavor expression are perhaps even richer because it spent a little bit more time on the skins.
Yeah, I think that there's incredible intensity on it, even with the pale color. And it's just a reminder that color is often one of the least useful things to tell you what a rosé is going to taste like.
This wine could be white and it would taste very much the same. I mean, the color is a minor factor in this wine, apart from we all have a beautiful pink rosé, but it's more.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Bev, because this is something I stress about all harvest. Is it dark enough? Is it too light? Is it? Oh no.
It's true, she does.
Neil, do you want to take Greg's question?
What is that? The addition of Vermentino and Counoise Pastelin is interesting. Well, Counoise is a given for rosé, and I think adding the Counoise is more a question of being able to source Counoise from a site that we like, and vine selections we like, etc., and farming practices meeting our criteria for a Pastelin vineyard. So we know that we love Counoise as a rosé. It's one of the best rosé grapes out there, without doubt. Vermentino is interesting to me. When you see a lot of Vermentino in the rosés of Provence, and it adds, to me anyway, which is going to sound weird because it's the only white grape in there, but it adds a certain mouthfeel and structure, a bitterness in a good way, if you will. So it adds a real element of that, and a real element of a minerality that I think is super. And of course, it's Vermentino, so it brings great acid and some lemony citrus, etc. But for me, a lot of the value of the Vermentino in here is it brings that really interesting grip on the palate, which I think elevates the rosé and makes it even more of a serious wine to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it is important to remember that there's actually quite a bit of Vermentino in a lot of Provence rosés. There's a lot of, it's called Rolle in France. It's the same grape, and about 80%. Last time I read, about 80% of the Rolle that's grown in Provence actually goes into rosé rather than making white wine. So it's pretty common. I know the Miraval, which is of course the rosé that the Parens are most directly involved in. The Miraval Provence Rosé is about 10% Vermentino most years. So it's definitely something which they're using in France. And since we did bring in Vermentino, and it's a fun thing for us to play with, seemed like a good thing for us to include. There's now been, 4 years that we've been able to include it in the rosé? 3 years, 4 years?
Maybe 3. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Chelsea, but for quite a few years, we experimented. We would put the Dianthus over the lees of the Talbot's Creek rosé, which when we really enjoyed the effects of that, but obviously there's not enough to do that with Pastelin, so actually getting Vermentino for it was interesting. But those early trials with the Dianthus, where we had the lees when we racked the Vermentino, so we put the Dianthus in there, and it just gave it that really intriguing character, and we took it from there and ran with it. And we're all Vermentino fans anyway. It's such an interesting wine. I think what it does to the rosé is just on a much broader picture, it just shows how interesting adding a grape or a grape to a blend, the difference that a small amount can make, even when, and it'll do things you don't expect it to do. Because I don't know that when we first started playing Vermentino, the first thing on my mind was not structure and grit by any means, but in the wine, it certainly brought that to the table, and it made it for me a really, really nice wine. It improved it, which is always we do some blind tastings first before we just jump in with this stuff. But I think it's been a great decision, and I think it's improved the wine personally.
Super cool.
Doesn't help with the color much, does it, Chelsea?
Thanks. I think it's lovely. Yeah, I have no problems with this.
No, nor do I. I'm just thinking about you stressing about it. Hey, let's dump some white in there.
Cool. Okay, well let's jump to wine number 2, which is the one white that we had in the classic shipment. And like, what a white to have if you're only going to have one white. This is the 2023 Esprit de Table Blanc. It, for now the third time, has all 6 of the Châteauneuf-du-Pape white grapes in it, with a relatively high percentage of Roussanne for us in our recent Esprit Blanc years. So 48% Roussanne, and I feel like we could do that because the Roussanne had such good freshness as well as great texture and richness. So Neil, I would love you to talk a little bit about what kind of the Esprit tiers of wines means sort of to you in your head. How do you think about what it means for something to be good enough to go into Esprit?
I think for me, not to overplay, but I think for me, Esprit is everything. It's our reason for being. It's why Tables Creek is what it is and where it is. That's why your father and Jean-Pierre and Francois, that was their idea. This bottle of wine was their original concept, is how I see it. And it's this vintage particularly, it's got all of the whites of Châteauneuf in there, all from our own stock. And I think it is exactly what your dad envisioned. And I think the goal is reached with this, because I taste this and alongside Châteauneuf whites, and it belongs there. It fits there. I don't think it even stands out particularly as being Californian. In fact, some of the wines over there, I think you'll find, even perhaps Boxtel, there's more oak on their white than there is on this, perhaps. But I think it's such a pure expression of our land. So what do I look for at the blending table? It's a wine that displays what we have, what the property gives us. Not looking particularly for flamboyance or showiness, but looking for balance and structure and reflection of place. And this wine, just tasting it now, it tastes like Tables Creek, and of course I've been there a long time, so I'm incredibly biased and I'm very proud of what we do. But I think with this wine, you can say goal somewhat achieved for your dad. It's got all the varieties of Châteauneuf in there, and its profile is gorgeous. It's rich, but it's got great minerality. It's got great vibrancy. There's beautiful acidity, and everything plays its part in this wine. I don't think, yes, you can pull the Roussanne out, but apart from that, I don't think anything sticks out. I don't think there's any sharp edges to this wine. I think it's a glorious example of our property.
I can imagine his smile. If he were to taste this wine, I can imagine his smile.
Might be even a giggle involved in that situation.
Chelsea, can you talk at all about the 2023 white blending? I realize this is a very long time ago, but I'm hoping you have some memories of that.
Yeah, I do remember. I remember sitting down around the 2023, blending session, and all of us coming off of that 2022 and 2021 white wine blending session, thinking, we just didn't have the production. We just didn't have the grapes. We didn't have the wine. And so 2023, everybody was just so hopeful. And we did have more. We had significantly more production, but it still didn't feel like much. And it was kind of an interesting year because it felt like we were going to have this bountiful harvest and just, production off the books or off, just insane. But it ended up being a fairly average quantity that we brought in. However, I do think quality was really high. And, looking at the gallons per ton that we were getting, they weren't really juicy grapes. You have some years where your gallons per ton are going to be 170 gallons per ton. And then in 2023, our gallons per ton, if I remember correctly, we were at like 134, 140 or something really, really low. But I do feel like you can feel that concentration in these wines now. They've got that density, they've got that concentration. I do remember that there was just this beautiful purity of fruit, and everybody, wrapping up those first 2 days or first day of tasting, when we went through all of the varietals and all of the individual lots, and went through and graded everything, and just kind of walking away from that session with a big smile on our face and going like, there's not as much as we would like, but it's really good. And I do remember, the Rousson in particular just being so strong. And those are always, like the years that the Rousson and the Mourvedre are really, really strong. Those are our most exciting years. And, walking away from that table and the Rousson lots were just like knock your socks off good, just so impressive. And thinking we were going to have, you're talking about a pretty robust amount of Rousson in this 2023 Esprit Blanc. But I do remember one of the blends that we kind of, used in that initial blending was like 55% or 56% Rousson. But it just ended up being a little too much, and it fell a little flat. And so, kind of coming back to this balance of varieties, and all of a sudden that's where all the pieces just click into place. And you do have that richness, you do have that honey character from the Rousson, but you also have that energy and that verve and that lightness on its toes from the other varieties, and just kind of, completing the picture.
I love it.
I'd like
okay,
to,
so
if I may, I'd like to just add, I made the comment when I was rambling on there that it can be tasted amongst French wines and doesn't necessarily feel like it's from here. And that comment is dancing around in my head. And I think it should be clear that that was not the goal. It was not a goal to make wines that tasted like they weren't from California. The goal was to make wines that displayed what these varietals can do in that place, and not, oh, look, it's California, or not California. Oh, we want to be French. That wasn't the goal. The goal was we wanted to be Tablas Creek. We wanted to show why we looked so hard for the right piece of land in the right place on the West Coast. And that's, I think, the beauty of this wine is it is itself, and it does feel. You can feel the California sunshine for sure, but it could easily go over and be in a lineup with Chateauneuf whites, and I don't think very many people would pick it out.
I think it would have incredible vibrancy if you put it in a lineup of Chateauneuf whites. There are few of them that have this level of acidity, I think.
No, so which you would think the opposite, really, past Robles, because of everyone's perception that the white wine wouldn't be one of its biggest characteristics, would not be its vibrancy and its brightness, but these varietals in that place, I think this shows that it really does work, and it works well.
There's I think a reason why we started out thinking that we would make 10 or 15% white and the rest red, and now we're at almost 40% white in our production. Mm-hmm. So we certainly have come to believe that this is an amazing place to make white wines. And you got to remember, Beaucastel is only 7% white.
You got to assume that other people think that too. We wouldn't be making 40% off our property if we weren't selling it, right?
True that. There's a couple of comments and questions about the Esprit Blanc that I think we should pull up on screen. If you could, Ian. So there's one of the, I can read the questions actually. So there was a comment from D-Ray saying, opened her first 2023 Esprit Blanc from her shipment and loved it. It's great. Thank you. And there's a question from David. Oh, perfect. There's a question from David asking if minerality, which I think is what he's asking, it says minimality. I'm imagining that that's probably actually minerality is a notable characteristic of Tablas Creek. And I think absolutely yes. I mean, those chalky soils that we have give everything that we make this almost saline tension to them that I've come to look for. I think that's one of the signatures of what we do. I don't know. How would you answer that, Neil or Chelsea?
I think, I've read a lot lately about minerality and how we perceive it in wine. But yes, I think it absolutely shows through. Obviously, much more strongly in the whites. Probably for me, in Grenache Blanc was the greatest display. But yeah, I feel it in the wine, and I wholly unscientifically spending the last 30 years tromping around in that vineyard and playing amongst those rocks. You can smell Tablas Creek in that wine. I mean, I'm sure Chelsea, you feel that from yesterday being out digging holes to do the biodynamic stuff. You can feel the soils in this wine without question, whether it's scientifically supposed to be or not. I don't care. I can sense it. I can feel it.
Yeah, I think if you look at or listen to the amount of times, like the tasting notes of, wet river rock or petrichor or crushed oyster shell or sea spray, all of these things are really kind of getting down to the same idea. And it is that minerality that is, kind of the fingerprint of this property, especially for the white wines, like Neil said. Like you pick up on it much easier on the whites, I think. And I think for the red wines, it would be kind of that like anise character. And I think both of those are kind of hallmarks of our property.
And then there's a question that Greg just lobbed in. So I'm gonna let the winemakers on this call answer the question about the varieties, but I am actually going to push back a little bit on the idea that Paso is a hot climate. I wrote a blog this summer after coming back from a couple of weeks in Europe where it was hot all the time. It was hot during the day. It didn't drop down very much at night. I came back. I walked out of the airport in San Francisco. It was like the first cool breeze I'd felt in 2 weeks. And I went back and looked at what the average temperatures had been this growing season here at Tablas Creek and in Avignon. The average highs were about the same. The average high was like 85 degrees or 86 degrees in both places, going all the way back to the beginning of May. But the average low was 14 degrees colder in Paso Robles than it was in Avignon. The average low was 60 in Avignon. It was 46 at Tablas Creek. So that was extreme. This was a hot year in Europe, and it was a coolish summer, at least most of the summer here in Paso Robles. But I went back and looked across all the way back to 2020. So the last 6 years, which have included hot years here and cool years here, wet years, dry years. And we've still seen an average temperature in the growing season 4 degrees cooler here than they've seen in Avignon. So yes, the days are hot, but the nights are so cold that it doesn't play like a hot climate a lot of times. So that's my I'm going to get off my soapbox, and I'm going to let Neil and Chelsea, I'm going to let you answer the actual question that was asked. So
well, I'm going to jump on your soapbox now you've made some space. It's something that I've always felt is people have never understood that. As much as we talk about diurnal shifts and we look at degree days, which really forget the nighttime a little bit, that cooling in the evening is a remarkable difference. I mean, I've lived in Chateauneuf and it was warm at night. It was hot. Here, living at Tablas Creek, for example, even last year where there were all those 100-degree days, we're just not wearing a sweater when we're barbecuing. We're in a t-shirt. It gets cool in the night times here. And it's one of the beautiful things about where we are, and one, to be living, but importantly, the cool nights that we have in Paso Robles are pivotal to these grape varieties. That said, before the Tablas Creek came to town, it was all Chardonnay, and the cool nights weren't quite enough for that for the most part, perhaps in certain pockets, but in general. So the advent of Picpoul Blanc, Grenache Blanc, I would reference particularly, and the acidity that they carry on those limestone soils in our climate with those cool nights has been remarkable. It's been revolutionary to what people believe the Paso can do. The others, Chelsea, I mean, I would say the one that has potential, not this year, but generally to have some acidity is Bord Blanc. That's what we would hope. But the Picpoul and the Grenache Blanc for me are and Vermentino, if you want to include that, it's not in this wine, but these are the ones that bring great acidity for me.
Yeah, the Grenache Blanc, I would say is probably my most important acidity component. You know, not only does it have that beautiful mouth-watering, like juicy acidity, but it also brings this great structure, you know, to both the Esprit and to the single varietal and to any other wines that we blend it into. I would say that's probably our most important, and it's a great producer for us too. You know, we, much like its red counterpart, Grenache Blanc and Grenache Noir both grow really, really well at Taubelis.
Okay, I'm going to take that opportunity to use that as a segue into our next wine. Thank you, Chelsea. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but our next wine is going to be our estate Grenache. And in fact, the next 3 wines are going to be an opportunity to do a deep dive into Grenache, because it is going to be 100% Grenache and then 2 blends that are led by Grenache. So we are with this is our estate fruit. It is from our regenerative organic certified vineyard. So you can see all of our estate wines. The Esprit Blanc would have had this as well. Everything except for the Patelins would have had this on it. But let's go back. Let's throw it back to the 2023 year. And I referenced it briefly at the beginning, but this was a pretty intense winter leading up to it. We had come off of a 3-year drought, and it was pretty apocalyptic. Like 20, 21, 22, it got hotter each year. It was really punishingly dry. And then it started raining the winter of in like December of 22, and basically didn't stop until March. We had floods we had the road washed out. It overwhelmed the culvert outside of our winery building and started flowing. Las Tablas Creek started flowing over the road as opposed to under the road. But that just meant that there was a ton of water reserves for the growing season. The cover crops were incredibly deep and lush.
Can I just jump in there really quick?
Yeah.
Just so people know, Ian, can you go back? Yeah. Just so people know, that picture, during that storm, the water was above that tree up in the top left corner. That was a terrifying rush of water coming through that spillway. That comes from the little lake on our property. And I have video of it. I went and got as close to the edge as I braved. And it was a terrifying, roaring mass of water that was above that tree up there. It was incredible. Sure, just thought I'd throw that one in there.
It was wild. I mean, the footage of the creek flowing over the road made it onto like the Weather Channel and CNN, and like it was intense out here.
It was intense.
But the vintage itself really benefited, I think, from all of that, because it did replenish the groundwater supplies. And then we had this gorgeous summer where it was a whole bunch of days in the 80s and very few days in the 90s and 100s. And unlike 2024, where there was a switch that got flipped in June and it finally got hot, it basically never got hot. We didn't start harvesting until the end of September, a full month later than we started in 2022. We didn't finish harvesting, it's sort of hard to see in there, but we didn't finish harvesting until I think the 13th of November. And I remember that we were less than half done on October 15th, which like that was when we were done the year before. And like there's no real guarantee. You can start to get some pretty squirrely weather when you get into the end of October and beginning of November out here. And we got lucky. We had beautiful weather. It stayed, the rain stayed away. I think we finished on the 13th of November and it started raining on the 16th of November. So we were able to get everything in. And what we got in was lovely. Chelsea mentioned that we even though we expected quantities to be huge, they were more like average. They were actually a little below average on the white side. The one grape where they were kind of huge was Grenache. So I don't know. Do you want to talk a little bit about Grenache in 2023? Either Chelsea or Neil?
I mean, I'm happy to jump in. The 2023 Grenache, I feel like we were all sitting around the table and going through all 24 lots of Grenache that were harvested and then fermented and then aged separately. I mean, it was like this tasting list that was a whole page of just Grenache lots. And all of us started the day, I'm like, are we just doing Grenache today? Like, it was a lot. And for some context, I mean, I feel like a normal amount of Grenache lots is going to be like 13 to 17. So 24 is outrageous. But every single one of them just absolutely brought it in totally different ways. I mean, we were able to run the gamut. Like, it was truly that rainbow of Grenache where you have, the lighter end of the spectrum, both in color and in aromatics and in flavor, all the way to the much, much darker end of the spectrum where it's just like powerful and dense and like just so intense. And so, tasting through all of these, and as always, like scoring them with the intent of, deciding where they're going to go. So obviously the things that were much darker and, more elegant and more powerful and more finessed, we're going to go into Esprit and Panoply and, Engoblet and Le Complice and things like that. And then on the lighter end of the spectrum, the lighter, juicier wines like Côte de Table, for instance, things that just have a friendliness to them and an affability. And so, trying to decide where on that spectrum everything is going to need to go. And it was a really cool year because it really showed, like we always talk so incessantly about the versatility of that grape variety. And 2023 was like the perfect year for us to showcase like all the things that Grenache can be and all the things Grenache can do.
And one of the things which we decided Grenache could do that year was to make our first ever Alouette. So this was full credit to Chelsea. This was us sitting around the blending table, having tasted everything, put most of the Grenaches into blends or into the varietal bottling, and still having like 1,000 gallons of Grenache at the end that was so like bright and pretty that we didn't think it would make sense to put back into oak to age for longer. Like, we were talking about like selling it off or trying to figure out what we were going to do. And this was Chelsea's comment saying, I would love to have a box of this in my fridge this summer. And so we did. That's what this wine became. And that's I think an indication of how great the Grenache was at all ends of that kind of darkness and power spectrum.
Yeah, and to be able to taste the Alouette next to, the wine that we have in our glass right now, the varietal Grenache, they're two totally different animals. They still have that candied character and that juiciness, but where the Alouette is just joy and lightness, this wine has all the markers of a very serious wine. This is probably, we had, despite the fact that we had so much Grenache in 2023 that we were looking at potentially selling off 1,000 gallons of it, the stuff that we had in the cellar is phenomenal.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, and I think if people are wondering like how we decide what to do in the Esprit end of the spectrum, Panoply end of the spectrum, what the Alouette end of the spectrum, those are, I think, pretty obvious. We're going to have the like richest, most powerful lots are going to go into Esprit and Panoply, and then the like brightest, freshest, juiciest lots are going to go to Alouette. I think of the varietal Grenache as the ones that are like right down the middle, where it's got the balance of darker and lighter element, it's got freshness, but it's also got structure, it's got enough tannin that it could age a bit. And this is my favorite 100% varietal Grenache that we've ever made at Tablas Creek this 2020.
Well, for my part, and you two both know it's kind of my nemesis, the Grenache, because it is so versatile. I mean, what is it supposed to be? Where's its mark? And getting my head around the fact that it doesn't actually have to have one. It can be many things. I mean, I love the light-bodied stemmy Grenaches that the likes of what am I thinking of, down in Los Olivos. Those wines, beautiful wines, Story of Soil wines, love those. Huge Paso Robles Grenaches, which I don't love so much, but they have their place. This vintage for me is where our Grenache should be. It has some weight, but not too much. The tannin structure is probably the best I've tasted from a single varietal Grenache from us. I mean, the balance of this wine is right where a Talbot's Creek Grenache should be for me. I love all the other stuff too, and then rosé, even Grenache, obviously some of the best rosé. But it's always been a hard thing for me to figure out where within this insane spectrum is the best point for a Talbot's Grenache. And I think, as I think we've discussed before, I think it was the last single varietal red that we did in the early days, because we couldn't quite figure it out. Where does it fit? And I think, and I haven't tasted this for a long time, and tasting it tonight, it's really on point. I mean, the tannin in this wine is gorgeous.
Yep. Okay. Ian, can you bring in some of the comments and questions that we've gotten recently? Oh, well, okay. This is an easy one. Do a refillable keg program with the Alouette. We do. We have it in keg. We've had it in keg both of the last 2 years. It is available to restaurants and wine bars around the country. We are pouring it out of keg in our tasting room.
I think they're looking one for their house, Jason.
That's what the boxes are for. We have those in box. That's the home keg. So yes, we 100% agree that the Alouette is a perfect wine for kegs, and we do that. We've done that both of the years that we've made Alouette, and we will definitely continue. Thank you, Bev. Lovely. Awesome. Yeah, 2016 was a very nice vintage for the 100% Grenache. So the clones of Grenache that we grow. So these are all from the clones that we got from Beaucastel. There are 4 different clones?
We have A, B, C, and D. Yes.
So these are all clones that come from Beaucastel. Because they are Beaucastel cuttings and not Entave cuttings, they're not associated with the numbers that people sometimes think of, but they're 4 of the clones that the parents chose that they thought would be the best that they use. So cool. And then one more question from Greg asking about how the Grenache is aged. So yes and yes. That's basically what we do. We use Foudres for just about all our Grenache, right? Is there any Grenache that's still in anything else?
We have some in stainless, some in large cooperage. I mean, if it can go in a Foudre, it will. But you got to have 12,000. So Grenache would like 12,000 gallon Foudres, but 1,200 gallon Foudres. Now we just added some 600 mostly for Grenache in my mind. Then larger cooperage. So yes, the largest cooperage that we can utilize, we do, and usually there's a little bit in stainless too.
Cool. Okay. Well, speaking
no
of
new oak,
right? Generally. So let's dive into the first of the 2 Grenache-based blends, and this is going to be the Côte de Tablas, which has always been the blend that we have leaned heaviest into Grenache, but it has been a very long time since we last leaned this heavily into Grenache in this wine. It's more typically in the 45, 50, sometimes 55% range. I had to go back and do some research to figure out when the last time was that we had this much Grenache in the Côte, and it was 2006. So it has been quite a long time. And a wine that we think of as an inspiration for this is the Coudelet de Beaucastel. So this is a wine that they make from the Beaucastel estate, but from the piece of the estate which is on the wrong side of the national highway that forms the border between Châteauneuf-du-Pape and Côte-du-Rhône. So when they drew the appellation lines in Châteauneuf, they they took about 30% of the Beaucastel estate, and it is north of that Appalachian line. And as you can probably imagine, it is not like a highway is actually a boundary to anything. Like, it's not a terroir boundary, it's not a climate boundary, and it's not even a soil boundary. That was the point at which those rounded galets roulés, the river stones that characterize Châteauneuf-du-Pape, they started to get a little less intense. But for this Coudelet portion of the Beaucastel estate, where they make a Côte-du-Rhône, it's still very much like the Beaucastel and the Châteauneuf-du-Pape climate. So they make this is a cool picture. Cool. Well found, Ian. So this is the northern boundary of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, is that red line. Inside the blue line is the Beaucastel winery. Those green plots that you can see north of the line, those are part of that historic Beaucastel estate. Those are the plots that go into Coudelet. And that because they aren't allowed to call it Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and because it doesn't get that Châteauneuf-du-Pape appellation surcharge, it, I think, is one of the greatest bargains in the world of wine. It's still, like, even these days, it's maybe a $30 retail bottle of wine, and it is just a stunning wine. And so to make it economical for them to farm that and sell it at that price, they lean a little more heavily into Grenache, which is more productive and easier to work with than Mourvèdre, which is the lead grape in their Châteauneuf-du-Pape portion of the estate. So when we created the Côte d'Atabas all the way back in 2000, the idea was to let Grenache be the lead player instead of a supporting player. And
Jason, can I jump in for a moment?
Jump away.
I don't think we should skim through this without bringing up the point that your father was very instrumental in the creation of that wine. From what I was told when I was there, he was the one that said you should make a wine and call it Coudelet rather than letting it disappear into other Côte-du-Rhône blends that might be around. And there was none for Prennes back in that day, I don't believe. But he was a very major part of creating that wine, which I think is pretty cool. And then to come to the Côte, and just that history is quite important.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, we haven't talked about that story. I'm not sure if everybody who's watching knows it, but my dad, the way that the two families for Tablas Creek got together is that my dad was their importer, their American importer. So he worked with Jacques and then Jean-Pierre.
An importer with an opinion.
Yeah, well, he definitely had opinions. There's no question about that. But this was as he was helping them kind of develop their business model. And they were making a wine and they were calling it Cru de Coudelet. And he was the one who suggested that they instead tie it in with Beaucastel because it is part of the Beaucastel estate, and call it Coudelet de Beaucastel. So it's a lovely wine. If you can find it, grab a bottle. It drinks like a Châteauneuf-du-Pape at a fraction of the price.
Great value for money, that wine.
Amazing wine. Cool. So we talked about the white blending a little bit, and we talked about the Grenache. Grenache almost deserved its own blending in 2023. But I remember one of the things I remember from that 2023 red blending is that we were a little surprised, given how good the Grenache was, that when we did the Panoply and the Esprit and even the Angoublé, that we were choosing blends that had a lot of Grenache, but not as much as we were expecting. Like, they were still, they were leaning a little more heavily into Syrah or into Mourvèdre. And then we got to this Côte d'Atabas, and we all around the table in the first round of blending chose the test blend blind that had the most Grenache in it, and weren't able to think of anything that we could do to make it better. So, like, this blend in this wine, like, it felt like it was really meant to be. I don't know. Do you all remember the same thing, or is this like an implanted memory?
I mean, these things make sense though, because, the way that it works is you have kind of this waterfall effect where you start with blending the Panoply and basically the highest rated lots with the most power and elegance go into Panoply. And that's a relatively small amount of wine. So you're putting all of the top tier number ones into that wine, but it's not, as far as quantity goes, it's not as huge. The big beast is Esprit, where that needs to be, like that really needs to tell the story of Talbot's Creek. People need to taste this wine and then want to come out to visit Talbot's Creek. Like that's the goal. You want to have this experience in a glass. And so that is, like we do make a decent amount of that wine. So you can find it throughout the country. And then, it kind of falls down the line, and much like Coudelet, where it's kind of, it's the beautiful little sister. But if that huge amount of Grenache doesn't go into Panoply and then it doesn't go into Esprit, then you have this treasure trove of spectacular Grenache lots, and they end up going somewhere. And so if it ends up finding its way into the Côte de Tarbes, then that's fantastic for the Côte de Tarbes. But yes, I do remember everybody sitting around the table, and there are sometimes, there are blending sessions where it's not contentious, but you're talking about, an importer with an opinion. Everybody around that blending table has opinions, and their opinions are the correct opinion.
It's internally contentious.
Yes. Yes.
I find myself arguing with myself all the time.
Yeah.
But, it's so funny because we do have these heated discussions around the table. And I think that is a major benefit to having that many, backgrounds and personalities all tasting these wines and deciding on the blends. And sometimes we do get this consensus, this, like this common vote where everybody decides that's the wine. And it feels like the sun has shone down on the blending table and like the birds are singing, but it's also a little bit terrifying because you're like, well, what happened? Should we try this again? Should we come back? And usually we do, we'll stick with that blend and like tweak another couple things with some other, possible blends just to make sure that we are all on the same page. And it just ended up being that was the right wine for 2023.
Awesome. Okay, I want to take a little pause in the talking about the wines that are in the shipment, and I want to get a quick check-in on the 2025 harvest because we are in the very last stages of that, and Chelsea has been deeply buried, sometimes literally, in this harvest over the last couple of months. So, Chelsea, can you give a little update as to where we are? Talk a little bit about the impact of the rain that we got back on, I guess that was the 14th of October. Just sort of talk about what you've seen.
Yeah. So we are so nearly there. That finish line is just right in front of us at this point. We've brought off, nearly 380 tons from our estate. And we have one more pick. We were talking about the Counoise for our Patelon, that Patelon Rosé that we use. So we have one more pick of Counoise that will go into both Patelon Red and Patelon Rosé, and that's it. As for estate fruit, we have some smatterings of Rousson in the vineyard that have already kind of gone through preliminary picks, those right picks. And so now we just need to come and clean things up. We have a tiny amount of Senso that's already been harvested. And again, that was kind of like, the right pick of that block. Because we go through these individual blocks multiple times and do multiple passes because we have a vineyard crew that's endlessly patient with us and, has a long history with Talbot's Creek and knows what we're looking for. And then we do have a little bit of Counoise left as well from our estate. So we're right there. I think my Excel spreadsheet is showing 99% finished from the original estimate that I plugged in. So we're getting there, but it's been a great growing season, and it's been every single year we say, yeah, it's such a weird harvest. It's such a weird season, because it's agriculture and there's no such thing as a normal year in agriculture. So actually this is extremely normal what we're experiencing. But it's been a harvest in parts, it's felt like, because we've had a couple rain instances. And so, we'll kind of let things sit and just be patient and wait. And then before the rains will come, we'll get everything that's ripe or like very close to ripe, get it into the cellar. And so we have this big push of activity, and then just, kind of let things mellow out, let the vineyard dry out, let the soils recover and soak up that rain. And then the following week, start testing again and start looking at all of these, wet chemistry numbers that we're looking at to determine when to pick. And then another storm will hit, and we pick again everything that's ripe and ready or close to ripe and ready, and then follow that whole pattern all over again. So we've had these ups and downs, but it's been great. I mean, you were talking about, previous years where you walk out and Neil and I are just, trying to figure out with Craig, well, where do you want to put this fruit that needs to go somewhere? And this year, with the pacing of everything, we haven't really had that dire need, or like those eye twitch inducing, like bins of fruit on the parking lot that need a home, that we're going to have to figure something out. Like we've had plenty of time between each of these blocks that you're able to like clear things out of the cellar, press things off, put them down in barrels so that they can, finish up their you slowly crackle through those primary and secondary fermentations. And then that tank is ready for the next fruit to come in for the next block. So, the rains are always scary because we're not accustomed to having harvest rains. That's just not, we have a rainy season, and our rainy season typically starts after harvest is finished. So for us, it's, a little anxiety inducing, but I think, Jason, as you pointed out a while ago, like in areas like where Bocastel is located in the Shipment of Pop, like they get rains, it's all year, they get it throughout the entire year. So this is old news for them. So we're learning to be patient and to trust the process, but so far everything's looked great. We did see a little bit of rot in some of the varieties, but again, we've got a vineyard crew that is so on top of things, and so they'll go through and drop fruit and take a look at, what each of these individual blocks is looking like, and any fruit that has, mildew on it, any kind of instance of something that we don't want, they'll just cut the cluster on the ground, and it'll eventually be composted back into the soil. So far, it's looking pretty great.
If anybody wants the kind of numerical analysis of where we are, I published a blog earlier this week, which kind of dove into some of the numbers. One of the things that was encouraging to me is that we were up almost 25%, even before getting those last bits into the cellar. We were up almost 25% in quantity over 2024. So we have pretty good yields of lots of things. And this will be another year where we will be sitting around the blending table wondering, what on earth are we going to do with all this Grenache? And we'll find
the Alouette bottle is going to get bigger.
Cool. I don't know, Ian, did you have any pictures from the 2025 harvest? So that's a rain. Oh, cool. So that's a picture of a cluster in one of those rain events on the left. And then on the upper right, that's what it looks like now. It is super beautiful. It's unusual that we have this combination of like fall foliage colors on the grapevines and green grass, because usually we get a freeze before we get rain. And so the leaves turn color and start to fall off before the grass starts growing. So to have them both, thanks to that rain a couple weeks ago, is unusual and very pretty. And then that graph in the bottom right is super hard to read at this size. So we're just going to move on. If you want the details, that's a summation graph. If you want the details, check out the blog and let me know if you have questions when you do. Cool. Okay, let's jump into the Anglais, which is the fifth wine of the six that we'll be trying. So this is always based on Grenache, or has been for the last several years based on Grenache. I guess not always. There have been a few years where Mourvedre took the lead, but we've sort of settled on Grenache as the lead grape in Anglais, with Mourvedre, Syrah, Counoise, and Tannat. So Neil, I'm hoping that you can talk a little bit about kind of the genesis of Anglais, like why we started making this all the way back in, I think 2007 was our first vintage, and what you feel like the dry farm blocks. What's that?
I could talk about that for a very long time, but really, the essence of this is what was asked of me from the Perrin and Haas families when I moved onto the property to farm was to grow and make wines that were a reflection of that place. And that would incorporate dry farming if possible. And at that point, we weren't dry farming. We were all pretty much the whole property was on 8x3 and 8x4 trellis systems. I started to look at, okay, so what is the truest expression of this place? And what goes on in the bigger picture in California? What are the old vineyards here? And it's true dry farming. There is no irrigation. The spacing is wider. 12 by 12 is pretty historic in California, and that's what a lot of our dry farm plots are planted to. So that's roughly 300 and something vines, 306 vines per acre, as opposed to 1,800 vines per acre. So that's a classic picture. That's Scruffy Hill, looking at pretty much mostly Grenache there, planted in 2006. And that was really our first big commitment to this. And we have a few plots on the main property that were a small dry farm. But in essence, my thought was always, if we want the truest expression of this place, that requires the minimum input from us and for the vines to just work the land themselves. So an old school dry farm, wide spacing was the way I saw would be the best way to achieve that. The oldest vineyards in California are planted in this style. So I knew that it would give us longevity, particularly Grenache. I was always confident with Grenache, less so with Mourvedre perhaps. And I think, I'm always curious to taste the differences between them. I'm nervous because you get a lot less yield potentially off of these vineyards, though they are proving to show greater longevity. And I think they do show an expression of place. I mean, I think if you taste the Engoblet and any of the other wines of ours, Côte and Esprit probably most appropriate, there is a different feel to the wine. And this Engoblet is 100% from those dry farm sections. Now, of course, it used to be all of that, or most of that went into this wine just to be able to produce it. I think, 07 was the first vintage. Now, of course, a lot of those dry farm lots are making it into the Panoply and the Esprit and all down the line, because they are what we're there to do. They are proving to be really, really nice expressions of the land. I reserve judgment to go a little tighter than 12 by 12 in the future, but 12 by 12 works. There is no question. And they weather the climate better than the trellis irrigated stuff. They don't feel the drought moments, or not drought, but low rain years, because their roots by nature of the beast are digging deeper to find the nutrients in the water that they need. So I think it's a spectacular wine, but I dare say in 20 years from now, the Esprit will be a huge percentage from the dry farm sections.
Yeah, lovely. And this is a picture of Jewel Ridge, which is our newest, largest dry farmed.
The most challenging vineyard ever planted, maybe.
It's tough.
It's
deep, remote, hard to get to. But making some of the best stuff that's coming off the property now.
I mean, I'm super excited for what's coming off there. We haven't really got into, there's still stuff yet to produce, like the Vermentino out there, I think, and the Pig Pool are going to be super exciting. I think Counoise is already showing to be, we knew Mourvedre and Grenache would be great, but Counoise is showing really well off of there too now.
And Roussan, don't forget that. I mean, that's been...
Well, no, Roussan's it's stellar out of there, and we're getting great production and really nice ripeness. It is a game-changing part of the vineyard for sure.
Ooh, that's such a pretty picture.
I tell people that's my office. My office is actually a little behind that picture, but I go up, sit up there, and I get great Wi-Fi on my phone, and that's my view. So go up there and answer emails is pretty nice.
No kidding. Okay, I got to start doing that.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah, seriously. Cool. Okay. Great. Nice comment by Bev about this wine. I agree. There's a lovely depth to this that I think is super, super cool. And I think it seems like with everything, there's extra levels and layers and depth in this 2023 vintage. I really think it is a truly.
I mean, I think I really felt, and I don't know how everyone else feels, but I thought we were going to get more weight, more intensity, perhaps, out of this wine, off those dry farm blocks, but it didn't turn out that way. It turned out to be, it just turned out to be more intricate to me. A lot more interesting, very, very intriguing wines coming off those plots. I can't wait. I mean, Scruffy Hill is already 20 years old, pretty much.
Yep.
And once
why we include the Tannat, because there is such beautiful intricacy to those head train lots where, when we started talking about, or when you guys started talking about making this wine, thinking that it was going to be so deep and dark and just like this powerhouse, and it ended up having this lithe power to it, but, not bulky, but just sinuous. And the Tannat kind of acts as an anchor to just hold it onto the palate so you can just experience the full breadth of what that wine is. But this is, the head trained lots, it's been such a joy because like you were talking about, where all of these lots are going into Panoply, they're going into Esprit, but the more plantings we do at Talbot's Creek, or if we rip out blocks and replant, we're moving towards head trained dry farmed, which is such a cool thing about this property. That's a benefit that we have because we have that accessible groundwater and the soils that allow us to do that. But how wonderful for Talbot's Creek, who is kind of at the forefront of sustainability, to be able to plant and grow head-trained, dry-farmed vineyards, which, this is the ultimate. We all talk about the Esprit and its importance to Talbot's Creek and, our canon here. But I think for me personally, the Angaublé is like such a cool piece of the Talbot's Creek history and kind of maybe not the history, but certainly the future.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's the way that I've thought about it for a long time, is that it's sort of a look at what we have always wanted Talbot's Creek to be. And more, like we're able to achieve that because we are now at almost half of our acreage is dry farmed like this, wide space dry farm. So, and we should probably have told people at the beginning, Angaublé, it means it's in goblet shape. So it's essentially a system of training without trellises that they use in the south of France, where you take a central trunk up and then you have arms that come off it, creating this kind of bowl shape in between that allows the flow of light and air. So Angaublé is a style of pruning that we thought was appropriate for this wine.
Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, it's unusual that your intentions didn't turn out how you'd hoped. They actually turned out better.
Right. Love it.
It's very rare for me.
Cool. Okay. Let's dive into the Esprit. So this herewith ends our tour of Grenache. And we are jumping into the Esprit de Table, which is always led by Mourvèdre. But this vintage, everything was so good that we have a little less Mourvèdre in this. A little less Mourvèdre in this than we have in a lot of recent vintages, and it is not because the Mourvèdre wasn't as good in 23. The Mourvèdre was amazing. It's that everything else was so good that it kind of forced its way into the blend. So still led by Mourvèdre at 33%, and then Syrah, Grenache, and then a little bit like the white, which has 6 of the Chateauneuf white grapes in it. This has 6 of the Chateauneuf red grapes with Cinsault, Vacquerez, and Counoise rounding out the blend. So, Neil, I'd love you to talk about how do you identify an Esprit lot as you have these blind tasting samples in front of you? How do you identify the lots that you think are right for Esprit?
Oh. Well, that's a very good question. Through all the years, I think that has evolved into I kind of have a sense of what I believe to be appropriate for a spree, and it is wines that are, again, not dissimilar to the white. It's the wines that I feel are reflections of our place, of our vineyard. It's wines that carry great structure, great depth, great character, that will make this wine to turn into this wine, which again is, I haven't tasted it yet, but I hope I'm not wrong, is a beautiful expression of our place, and you could do anything with that collection of varietals from this vintage. We could have made we don't have enough, but we could have made a Vaccarès led wine and it would have been a beautiful wine. But for Talbot's Creek, which was always meant to be Mourvedre led, if you will, to find so they all fit together. So nothing overpowers another. Everything is seamless. Mourvedre shouldn't stick out. It should be the core, but it should not stick out. So I don't look for the flamboyant stuff. I look more for the stuff that holds, again, great balance and great structure. The nose will come. I know the nose will come. And Counoise will bring that. Sancerre will bring that. Grenache will bring that. Mourvedre and Syrah, the Mourvedre, particularly, Mourvedre brings that depth, that deep, deep foundation of the Esprit. And it's incredibly important. And I think it just elevates more and more as the wine ages also. The Mourvedre is such an important part of what we do. It's hilarious that we hung our hat on Mourvedre and Roussanne, which is the two hardest things to grow. I wish we'd gone with Grenache Blanc and Grenache or Syrah. Life would be easier. But as they say, you get what you pay for, because the Mourvedre and the Roussanne, they give our Esprits just this depth of character that is unique and beautiful.
Yeah, I love the way this wine came out. It has depth. It has such intensity of flavor, but there's no sense of it being heavy at all. There's no sense of overweight to it. It is so like lithe and pure. It's like,
for me,
I've been out showing this wine in the market to sommeliers and wine buyers a lot over the last couple of months, and like the extent to which it is both like delicious and impressive and likely to become something even more fascinating than it is now. Like, that combination is amazing. There've been plenty of years where I've been out showing the new Esprits and they've been like, you could see their potential, they're going to be great, or they're really tasty right now. And this one, I feel like, has all of that. It has the full spectrum of what we hope for.
And I love a wine where whatever that wine may be, whether you know it, whether it's blind or not, but when you swirl it in the glass and you put your nose in there and you're like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And then you put it in your mouth and it's just like, whoa, okay, this is serious, and that's what this brings to me. The nose is great. It's not overtly flamboyant, but it shows just great intrigue. And then you get it in on your palate and it's just like, oh, this is real.
So Chelsea, I was hoping that you would talk a little bit about what the trace varieties add to this blend. And then we also got a question from Greg specifically asking about Vaccarès. But I want you to answer that. But also, if you can talk about, I think we've talked about Mourvedre and people have a sense of what Syrah and Grenache are like. Like, what are Sancerre, Vaccarès, and Counoise bringing to the table?
Yeah, so I feel like, Counoise has been part of this blend for ages, nearly since the beginning. And so I'll start with Counoise, but Counoise is a really large berry grape variety. It has relatively thin skins. So the juice and then the subsequent wine that you get from Counoise is much lighter in structure. It doesn't have that tannic grip. It doesn't have that intensity that you get from, some of these other Rhone varieties that can have kind of these rough edges. In particular, the Syrah and Mourvedre, which can be a little sinister at times. And so Counoise to me was always just like this polishing element that, you could just add. It doesn't take much. It takes actually a shockingly small amount, which is surprising given that these other grape varieties do have such grand personalities. where Kunwa has kind of like a little bit more demure characteristic. But in small amounts, it really just softens all those edges out, just brings everything together, makes a much more cohesive feeling wine. And then to me, we introduced Senso, which has been one of the greatest delights. I feel like I keep asking, like, can we please plant some more Senso? I want more Senso. I want it for the red wines. I want it for the rosé. I want Senso. I want just more Senso in my life. And Senso to me just kind of like suffuses the wine with this lightness and this joy. One of the hallmark tasting characteristics that I always seem to pick up from Senso is like melted popsicle or like melted lollipop. There's just something so comforting about that wine, and it is just such a delight to drink. And so that one, again, it doesn't take a lot, but it just elevates the whole experience in a way that's almost a little bit more playful, and just makes it that much more approachable. And then on the opposite end of that spectrum, we have Vaccarès, which Vaccarès, we were just talking the other day with our interns this year about the first time we harvested Vaccarès and how everybody's, taking out their phones and taking video and taking pictures of, the first US harvest of Vaccarès. And we put it in tank and we were so excited to pull a sample of it. And so we put it into an open top fermenter and ran over there and pulled a sample as soon as that hose was disconnected. And the juice that came out of that tank was so inky black, and all of us were just like passing around this sample jar, just like in shock. But Vaccarès, as a finished wine, it has this sinuous muscle to it, and it does have hard edges, and it has this drying tannin. It is just structure and intensity with this beautiful, like dried floral characteristic that just kind of like just enough to confuse everybody. I'm like, what is this wine? It's got, all of these, great pieces and parts that all come together for this one really, really cool wine. And so, having all of these different personalities now at our fingertips to use for blending, and everything, being mature enough, both in the vineyard and in the cellar, that we feel that it's good enough quality to put into the Esprit has been just a really fun exploration and adventure. Because, the first few years we harvest a grape variety, it's still getting its feet under it. It's still working out all of those numbers. It's still in its adolescent phase, essentially. And so it'll take a few years before we feel that it is of high enough quality for us to include in the Esprit. So these did not get allowed in right off the bat. And you'll notice that we don't have Terre Noir in the blend yet, because we don't feel that it's ready. We don't feel that the Terre Noir that we have now, it has a place in the Esprit. And luckily we've been able to create the Le Complice so that it has this perfect home. We created a blend for Terre Noir so that it belongs just in the right spot. But to get to know these wines and then to be able to find a place for them and to have that place be the Esprit has been really, really cool.
And this is just a piece still of this larger mission that we have of getting all of the Chateauneuf grapes here and in production. And one of the really exciting developments that we had earlier this year was that we were finally able to bottle the 14th and final grape in the Chateauneuf du Pape collection. So that we finally bottled Muscardin, all 21 cases. Oh, that's cool. So it's fun. We were not the only people who were excited about it. The Cantor wrote this beautiful article about it, and tasted every one of the different varieties and wrote them all up. And the current issue of Wine Spectator has a piece called The Last Grape talking about Muscardin. So it's really fun. And I dream of the day when we will be able to include all of them in the Esprit, but they've got to earn their way in. They've got to feel like they're the right thing. We're not going to put them in just because we have them. I think that's important. Okay. One last question I have for both of you. I'm wondering if tasting this 2023, does it remind you of any other vintages that we've made, or is it truly just its own thing? And can you talk a little bit about how you think this is going to develop with a little bit of time in bottle. I don't care who goes first. You can decide on your own.
I am personally not great at aligning things with another vintage. I don't know with this guy. I'm not gonna. I can't. Nothing springs to mind, but I think it's going to involve. I mean, it tastes so young right now. It's beautiful right now. I mean, I'd open a bottle of that with dinner anytime tonight. I would do it, but it's going to evolve so beautifully. I mean, there's so much vibrancy in there and the depth there to carry it. This wine in 5 years is going to be stellar. I have no question about that. 20 years, I wouldn't worry a bit about selling someone a bottle of this and saying, put it away for 20 years. It'll be great. I would not worry about that at all. And I do worry about that. I don't say that about all the wines we make. Usually the Esprits you can, but this wine, I think, like the white, sitting here today, tasting the two, trying to be objective, I don't know that we have hit a better mark of Esprit white and Esprit red from a vintage like this. I think it's just showing beautifully.
I agree. How about you, Chelsea?
I've heard whisperings of people comparing it to 2011, which I do think is a worthwhile comparison. You know, it has that musculature, it has that power that's beautifully cloaked in fruit. You know, it's got the ripeness, it's got the structure, it's got the poise, it's got the power. This is a vintage that does check all of the boxes for me. And I think I'm going to say I'm not going to compare it to another vintage. I think 2023 is going to go down for me as just one of my favorites. You know, I've got a handful that I keep in my back pocket that are always, you know, like the go-tos. And I think 2023 I'm going to be adding to my list.
I mean, I think that plays a lot into the thing that Chelsea said earlier, which is I've said many times myself, there is no normal in a vintage. Every vintage is different. Everyone said, oh, it's a weird vintage. It's like, well, they're all weird. I mean, sometimes they're better weird, sometimes they're not good weird, but they're all different for their weird intricacies. And that is, in fact, the beauty of being an estate, that you are wholly affected by the environmental conditions of a given year. So to compare with another vintage is fun, but they are their own beast. They are a reflection of what we do is a reflection of that vintage. And this one is a spectacular one. You know, I love them all, but this one I think is unique in its, as Chelsea said, there isn't a box that is not checked with this wine for me.
For sure. If any of you are curious, we do keep a vintage chart if you want to know how this or any of our other wines are evolving. Because I feel like sometimes we scare people by telling them that a wine can age for 20 years as though they're doing it wrong if they open it before that length of time. So we have a vintage chart that we've been keeping for 20 years that has two different notifications for when are great times to drink it. One is like drinking well, youthful, and this is sort of what Neil said, like in 5 years, this is going to be glorious. Like right now, our 2017 Esprit Red is the one that I pick when I'm really trying to show off. And it's just like, it's come into its own a little bit, but it's still mostly about that brightness and fruit. And then there's a second window, which you get 10 plus years down the road, where it's developed some of those secondary and tertiary flavors. It's a little less fruit driven and more earth and leather and meat driven. And it's glorious in that stage also, but you're not doing it wrong if you open it in that first phase. So my analogy I've started telling people is like, I want to buy a car that's well enough made that it's still on the road in 20 years, but I'm not waiting 20 years to drive it. So that's the idea for me with a wine. A wine that is a truly ageable wine is a wine that has enough power and balance that kind of whenever you check in on it, it's going to be something that it's going to provide a great experience. So, okay. There is the vintage chart. Awesome. Thanks, Ian. So there you go. That's the vintage chart as we shared in the newsletter or in the shipment that we just just shared with you all. But it is also available anytime on our website. So you can always find it linked from any wine's individual page and from the top menu on our website. Okay, we are at 6:30. So I'm going to try to wrap things up. There are a few things that I want to highlight for anyone. We got a question from Sybil. I think we should answer. So is it okay to drink anything that's in the closed phase? I mean, that's this sort of dark, like purple color. There are not a lot of things that are in the closed phase. It's not like it's going to harm you, and it's not like you're going to hate it, but that's our indication that it probably is not as good as it was and not as good as it will be. So we're basically suggesting, if we note it as in a closed phase, that give it a year or two and you'll enjoy it more. Again, there's a lot of choices on there that are not in that closed phase. If that is the only wine that you have and you feel the need for Douglas Creek, like open it up, give it a little extra half hour of a decant, and you'll probably be in good shape. But it is our indication to hold off if you have other good options.
It's a guideline.
It's a guideline. Yeah. Okay. So I did want to talk about a few of the other things that we are working on. Obviously, these are things, if you follow us on social media, that you have hopefully seen at least a little bit about. One of the things that I'm super excited about is that we recently were a part of the founding group creating something called the Wine Atlas Collective. This is an association of 8 wineries. So 3 in California, us and Ridge and Frog's Leap, Brooks up in Oregon, Lake Hole 41 up in Washington, and then Red Tail Ridge in the New York Finger Lakes, Blenheim in Virginia, and William Chris in the Texas Hill Country. And what this association does, this collective does, is it essentially gives you the opportunity to use your wine club membership from one winery at any of the wineries in the collective. So as a member of Douglas Creek, you can visit Ridge and be treated as a member. You'll get their member pricing. You'll get to try the member-only wines. If there are member-only experiences, you can sign up for those. Same thing with all of these great wineries all over the country. And it's part of the way that we're trying to build the value of membership and give people maybe a little extra incentive to try some of the amazing diversity that exists in American wine. So, that's one piece. Second piece.
I have a question, Jason. I have a question for you.
Yes,
on this.
please. Yeah.
I think this is super cool. Do you foresee a day when someone could be a Wine Atlas Collective member and get a shipment of each of these wines as a group thing? You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. The challenges of ordering
I know the challenge.
Bottle from a number of different places, the logistics are a little bit of a challenge. But it's funny that you should mention that. We worked with Master of the World, who we have used to do the tasting kits over the last several virtual tastings. And they have put together a Wine Atlas Collective tasting kit. And we're going to be doing a live virtual tasting on the 3rd of December. So that is kind of the perfect thing for what Master of the World does, where they can put these wines from all these different wineries in a single package. People can order them, get these 180 milliliter bottles of a wine from each of the wineries, and then here. Oh, amazing! I didn't realize we had this picture. Thanks, Ian. Well done. So this is a picture of that kit where there's the little bottles of 8 wines, and we're going to be doing this joint tasting. So that is at least a great opportunity to try these different wines. And we sent out a code to our club members, so you can order wines from other wineries using your essentially member discounts at Douglas Creek. We have not yet figured out how we would do something like a joint shipment beyond these sample packs, but it's a super good idea.
What a great thing that would be, though, right? To get that shipment on your doorstep. Just where do I start situation.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I think it's super cool. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, kudos to Janie Huke at Brooks Winery for coming up with the idea and asking us if we'd be interested. If you would like to know more about her, she will be my next Instagram Live guest in 2 or 3 weeks coming up. In the vineyard, if you have been following us on Instagram or Facebook, you will notice we have new lambs. This is that season where the adorableness quotient is kind of off the charts. We also have new puppies. So like if baby animals are your thing, and if they're not your thing, like what's the matter? But if they're your thing, stay tuned to Tubeless Creek. We got tons of stuff going on. We'll have the sheep being released back into the vineyard shortly. There's going to be lots of cool visuals of that. We have been trying to be super active both here at the winery and out on the road. I know I have spent more time on the road this year than I have in probably 20 years because it's an important moment to do it. And it has meant that I've gotten to go to some incredibly cool places. Like I was in London earlier this year. I was in Chicago last week. I was in New York a couple weeks ago. But we've been sharing something on social media called the Tubeless on Tour. And that we'll share every couple of months. It'll give you a heads up on where we're going. And we would love to see you here or near you. One of the things that we will be doing here is our en primeur tasting. I think, Chelsea, you mentioned this just earlier in this event, where this is our chance to show people kind of a first look still in barrel of the upcoming vintage, the 2024 Esprit and Panoply, and new this year, we're making a Panoply Blanc from 2024. So this is the chance for people to come try these wines and order some of things that are likely to be scarce. This 2024 vintage was a very scarce vintage. It was something like 25% below our normal quantity. So there are things that will go quick. So that'll be December 6th. We will do our in-person en primeur tasting. I would encourage people to come to that. But if not, and you can make it here at some other point between now and then, we are going to be pouring those three wines, those three out-of-barrel wines, to wine club members who visit in the tasting room over the next month. So you don't have to be able to be available on December 6th. I have not seen this Panoply Blanc label. That's fun.
No, nor have I. I was thinking the same thing.
Wow,
That's
we
what we
didn't
get for having the director of marketing who was also doing our label designs as the guy behind the controls. Like we get this is cool. So yeah. Anyway, Panoply Blanc is sort of if you're a wine club member and you know the Panoply Blanc should be intuitive. It's our pick of the best, like 3% of the lots that come into the cellar, and leaning even more heavily into our signature grape. So in this case, Roussanne, than the Esprit Blanc does. So it's the tasting I did of it a couple of weeks ago to check in on it was stunning. And I think this wine is going to be a great thing to add to the list. Keep an eye on your emails. You do not have to come to the event to order futures. It is available to all wine club members. We'll announce it by email Tuesday of next week, I believe, will be the official announcement. For those of you who are followers of the blog, we were informed at the beginning of September that TypePad, which has been the host of our blog for 20 years, would be closing in a month. And anybody who wanted to keep their blog content active had a month to transfer it someplace else. We scrambled in September and have relaunched the Tubeless blog on a platform called Ghost, which has been kind of a revelation. And it's nice working on a modern platform and not one that was designed 20 plus years ago. But if you have been subscribing to the blog and getting the blog sent to you by email, you'll need to resubscribe on Ghost. And we talked in a blog, in the first blog that I posted on Ghost, we talked about why we made the move and how we did it. And we were able to bring over all of those older articles and all of the pictures that came with them. So we didn't lose any of the content, which we were super excited for. We're over 1,000 posts in 20 plus years. And it's nice to know that we're now on a platform that'll allow it to continue. And then finally, we are continuing our Instagram Live series. So I've had some very cool guests in recent weeks. So that's in the bright red jacket. That's Brett Saberhagen, like 2-time Cy Young Award winner, who now is in Paso doing very cool wine stuff, including a great fundraiser for cancer support. That's Janie Huke, who's coming up next week. We've got Charlie Palmer, the chef who is taking over the program at the Paso Robles Inn progressively over the next 6 months. And then we'll finish the year with Mathieu Perrin will be my last guest. I've started for the last 3 years. I've had a Perrin come and join me for the last guest of the year. And I'm excited that it's Mathieu. So anyway, we'll continue to do this. This happens on Instagram live not every second Wednesday, but every second or third Wednesday. And they've been great. Okay. I think that's enough out of me. Neil, what is noteworthy in your world? What are you looking forward to? Any final thoughts? Now's your moment.
Now's my moment. Same as ever, really. There's some old blocks of the vineyard that, for one reason or other, we're going to pull and replace. That's exciting to me because we can start bringing, we can plant more Sanso for Chelsea.
Yep, definitely. That's noted.
That's definitely high on the list. And just continuing to push the boundaries in the vineyard and the farming practices that we have, and we continue to develop and continue to try and be better. And just, after the number of years I've been doing it, I look forward to everything. I look forward to sitting at the blending table. I look forward to seeing the fruits of this harvest, as it comes to a close. We all go about our business, and then boom, springtime comes, and we're tasting wines and seeing what they reveal. It's a very cyclical business, working vineyard and winery. And it's obviously it's one I love deeply. So I'm excited about it all. I'm excited about getting new stuff in the ground, new vineyard. The parcels that came on this year that we planted a few years ago were stellar. Jewel Ridge was stellar. I think that Santos and Pedro showed very well for really first harvests. So I'm just excited for progression and growth.
How about you, Chelsea?
This time of year, I'm excited for tomorrow. We've got a great team that I get to work with in the cellar, and, between Neil and his son, Austin, and Craig and Caitlin and Amanda, these are people that I just love being around, and they just so happen to be my coworkers, and just working hard and doing what we all love to do. And it just so happens to make some beautiful wines that we all absolutely adore. It's a real gift, but, after tomorrow, then it's going to be the next day. And then soon enough, it'll be just, tucking all those wines from the 2025 vintage away in barrel and letting them, safely, quietly, slowly do their thing. And, after the rush of the harvest season, where everything is just all gas, no brakes all the time, it's just physically and mentally demanding every second of the day. To just have that quiet season after, where you can just slowly get to know each of these wines and, pull samples and taste through. And
Chelsea's looking forward to decorating her house for Christmas. Come on.
That'll be tomorrow night after that last trick-or-treater. Oh, Neil knows me after working together for 18 years.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Neil and Chelsea, for taking the time to share this Thursday evening with me and with our members. Thank you if you tuned in. We're grateful for your support and your interest and your questions and your comments. And on behalf of Neil and Chelsea, on behalf of Ian behind the controls, on behalf of the parents.
Well, we might have a guest appearance coming here. Come here.
Okay, I can't wait. On behalf of Bettino.
No.
Miss you, Tino. So thank you everybody who's been a part of this tonight. We're grateful to have you as a part of the Tablas Creek family.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jason, Chelsea. Always a pleasure to do this. I think it's a great moment to connect with people.
Absolutely. Thanks for the great questions. It's always so fun.
Yeah, questions are great.
If you have suggestions for things you would like us to do next time, or other things you'd like us to do, leave them in the comments. We really do read them, we listen, and we appreciate it all.